Hello everyone and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. This video is going to be all about Chapter 24, Part 2 of the main campaign, so careful for spoilers if you're not caught up on the main story just yet. We're going to dive into some of the quests from the story on the hard and very hard difficulties, in part because there are a couple cool boss fights this time around, and I'll share my thoughts and impressions on everything that happened in this half of the chapter. Alright, so this chapter picks up with our party still in Lefkos, having arrived at the Dragon Necropolis. We headed there last chapter, and that one was really focused more on Sheila's development and Gatov's backstory, their relationship, and this half of the chapter is really focused on the history of the Great Worms, their primordial forms, their battle against the progenitor in the past, and how the dragons can reawaken their primordial power in the present day, and also reclaim their memories of all of their past lives. So in the Dragon Necropolis, we meet the spirit, or a mana projection of sorts, of primordial Midgard-Sormr, sort of the original Midgard-Sormr, the one that, along with the other elemental great worms, sealed away the progenitor in a battle long since past. And primordial Midgard-Sormr explains that he left a fragment of himself behind in case the day would come that the progenitor would return and try to create a world with no possibility. And so we meet this dragon ghost, as it were, or dragon projection, however you want to see it. And he also explains that the original battle against the progenitor, all 5 of the Great Worms had to fuse together in some way, sacrificing their individual selves, and become a vessel for Bahamut, Bahamut being just a fragment of the Origin's power, and the Origin being the other being of creation in Dragalia Lost besides the progenitor. So up until now, we've sort of seen Bahamut as the true parallel to Xenos, kind of a god in its own right, but now we find out that Bahamut is just one part of the Origin's real power, and it's the only part that was sort of accessible to the Great Worms in the form of the vessel that they forged. So once they did that, they, along with Elysium, were able to seal away the progenitor upon its return to the world, when the progenitor was trying to create a world without possibility back in the day, sealing the progenitor into the other world. And that required not just their combined powers, but also the power of Elysium, and was not an easily accomplished feat. So many years pass, a lot of time passes, thousands of years. Ilia and Elysium have their whole storyline, along with Mine and Zethia, who traveled into the past, of course. And that all takes place. Elysium gathers up some of the power in the world from the Great Worms because he doesn't want them to have to sacrifice themselves once again. And he sort of takes that primal power into himself in his primal mark and becomes the host to not only his own power as the Holy Worm, but also all of the Great Worms' hidden power from their past. So this is slowly unveiled to us throughout the chapter. Honestly, a little bit of it is lost on me because I feel like it's getting kind of complicated. The origin story of Dragalia Lost is getting increasingly complicated as these progenitor and Bahamut arc continues along. But suffice to say, we eventually get the appearance of Baron in the story, and Baron comes with Dark Elysium or Black Mana Elysium, and it comes to the point that we realize that we have to slay or defeat Elysium in order to retrieve the primal power from Elysium and restore it back to all of the different Great Worms. The problem with that is that Baron has the ability to create other worlds, and just like Xenos, has the ability to sort of fix causality or fix possibility on one outcome. And so when we defeat Elysium the first time sort of reverses, or at least it seems that way, but really the causal chain is sort of fixed. The world we're in is Baron's world to ideate, I guess, and it returns to the point before we defeated Elysium. Honestly, this is also a little bit confusing to me, just the way that it's presented about different worlds, but my interpretation of it is sort of like a localized reality, almost like a cube or a sphere in space-time, that maybe Baron's able to manipulate what happens in that localized reality, because the solution apparently to this whole problem, as presented by Ilya and Nedrick, is to destroy the world. And not only that, but I think the Ghost of Midgard's former past also mentions that. When they say destroy the world in this context, I think what they mean is sort of to break down that sphere of influence over which Baron has domain or control over causality, and is able to reverse or undo things that don't fit with his predetermined view of what should happen. So it seems like they're trying to change the world they're in, or the world that Baron creates around this conflict in which they can never defeat Elysium. And the way that they do that is that they have to tap into the power of Bahamut as a potential destroyer of worlds, some of the power of the Origin, and Zethia along with Nedrick are able to do so. They're able to stop Baron's attempts to destroy or defeat the party. However, in so doing, in destroying the Primal Mark rather than Elysium himself and retrieving that power, in so doing, that power becomes vested into Nedrick, and he's really not able to handle the power of all the Primal Great Worms himself. It's very overwhelming to be contained in a human body, and so this is where Yuden finally steps up and basically says, leave it to me, the power of bonds, the power of friendship. I know the Great Worms, I've been pact-bound with them for a while. Let me take it on and I'll see what I can do. And there's this cool moment where we see a close-up of Yuden and kind of some orbs or spheres that represent the different Great Worms, and he is able to successfully retrieve their primal power, saving Nedrick, and then not just keeping that within himself, but distributing it back to the Great Worms, who otherwise, it seemed, might not have actually been able to receive that power. And so we then find out that, wait, it's not going to be that easy. We can't just fuse these Great Worms together. That's not really going to be able to happen. But Yuden and the party puts forward that, last time around, that's what everyone did, and the progenitor still escaped. So we're going to have to come up with a new plan. We're going to have to do something totally different in order to successfully defeat Xenos. And Ilya has the idea that maybe the Auspex's power, in that Baron was an Auspex and could create worlds, well, maybe the other Auspexes, if they work together, so Sheila, Xena, Zethia, and Ilya, and perhaps others, who knows, can use their power to create a world in which possibility is preserved. It's a lot. It's a little bit over my head for me, but I kind of like it. I feel like this would be a lot easier to understand with more visual elements. Like, it feels like one of those things that's hard to read, but maybe if it were presented in an anime. And lately, the story has kind of made me want a Dragalia Lost anime, especially if some of these events, like the Operation at Your Service, were the side arcs to the anime, right? Because they'd be very funny. But anyway, it was a lot, but the chapter ends with that being Ilya's plan. I'm going to click in here to the chapter so you can see the characters. We also got the reveal of the Primal Great Worm's forms, not in silhouette mode anymore. So we could actually see what they look like, but it looks like they weren't there on the characters page. And this is the scene I was talking about earlier with Yuden, so we can take a look at that. But as far as my thoughts on the chapter go, I mean, it seems like we're definitely setting up this battle with the progenitor, aka Xenos, and we now have the context for the Primal Dragon trials. Everything seems to be proceeding pretty smoothly. My expectations around the next Gala character are still that Nedrick's most likely, although this chapter didn't necessarily have too many moments for him, but he did absorb the primal power. So that's pretty much my take on things. Let me know what you think about the chapter in the comments below. That is going to do it for today, though, everyone. So thank you as always for watching. Take care, and I'll see you next time.